Hello, and welcome back to 1851's Top Franchise Development Website Series. My name is Ben Warren, and I'm so excited to be joined today by one of our judges from the awards, Thomas Scott, CEO of Brand Journalists and the co-founder and COO of Home Based Franchise Group. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, let's jump right into the questions. First of all, what trends stuck out to you this year as you were reviewing the sites?
Well, it's a big picture trend to start with. This has been a really interesting year for franchise recruitment. At the beginning of the year, Daryl Johnson from Frame Data said, we think our franchise recruitment levels are going to be up to where they were at the end of 2019, which was an historical high point. The truth is, as we wind down 2021, we had a 600% increase over his tallest optimistic thing. It's been a banner year for franchising in 2022. When they say that the 2020s are the roaring 20s for franchising, the importance of proper, well thought out franchise development in today's space is a bunch of new generations of people and new classes of franchise owners are reaching into the industry. It's changing really quickly. The franchise recruitment website is the single most important part of your arsenal. Like if you're not thinking about how am I telling my story to the right audience, there's just massive growth in franchising. And I talk to people all the time. They're like, I don't know, everybody seems to be closing deals but us. And it's often like a weak website. But there were some really good mix. There were some excellent websites and some that really missed the mark, in my opinion. You can't just throw stuff up on a web page and call it quits. You really have to think about some of the things. I think some of the elements that really work today are much better use of video, much more informative content. It's really, really hard when you build a recruitment website and you're trying to replicate the kind of conversation that you have with a recruiter, which is typically a 45-minute or an hour conversation. You can't do that on a 5-page website with 1,200 words. There's no way you could pull that off. And so I think the one big trend is I've seen a lot of people slip into skimpier and skimpier and skimpier websites, and at the expense of their SEO rankings for Google and also at the expense of engagement with potential candidates. Those would be my two big trends. Or just, the ones that were really successful had much more structured content and heavier, kind of more thoughtful use of video, and we're more emotionally engaging towards similar people doing similar things, and that all the information you need to look at a brand and go, could I see myself doing this for a living? Could I be a franchisee?
So you mentioned both a positive trait there and a negative trait that you noticed. Was there anything else that stuck out to you that you maybe hadn't noticed in the past that you thought, oh, this would be a really good thing for franchise development website designers to either embrace or avoid moving forward?
Yeah, and I can speak to the website work that we do. I think one of the trends that you really should pay attention to today is stop thinking about the mobile version or website as the mobile version. Think about it as the primary version and design for mobile first, and do a good job of thinking about how somebody interacts with a mobile website. If you've ever looked at TikTok or Instagram or Facebook, and you look at the intuitive controls and those interfaces, which they're, high engagement, high amount of time spent on those. And then you look at people's mobile websites from the list of sites that made it in the cut. Some have had people put a lot of thought into. Some of our sites, Teriyaki Madness, which is not one of my sites, did a great job, for instance, of where the intuitive kind of controls are. We put ours at the bottom where your thumb would be. And then the interface, because the navigation on a phone is different than it is on a laptop or a desktop. And so that's the one big trend. I think start with designing for, people tend to mock up their desktop version and then they make it mobile, and they never really go back and think, well, did I make it mobile in a way that was going to drive people through my content and unpack all the pieces and drive engagement and education in a positive way? So I definitely saw a trend in that front. I think spending more time, all to the point that you might think about the websites as separate websites. You might actually have a different structure for mobile, because the way you go through a vertical screen is different than the way you go through a traditional desktop or laptop screen.
So you mentioned earlier the use of video and that being a really valuable tool. Were there any examples of maybe more unique or unusual content forms that you think would be valuable for more brands to adopt?
when I say use of video, the one trend I thought is really helpful, and I saw this on Enhance's website. There were a couple of other websites. Celebrity Schools maybe is the one that I saw, which used some really cool downloadable white papers. I think using video as a library of video, it's cool to have it on pages here and there because people will listen to it. And if you're reading about an article about how a brand works and then there's a brand story, that makes sense. But video just for the sake of video isn't very effective. If I have a franchisee validation page with video interviews, which a lot of sites do now, I find that really helpful. And not just, not just the kind of video where you put a franchisee in a logo shirt in front of a logo wall and that you feel this painful, inauthentic, kind of aggressive thing where like, okay, somebody's making you say something nice about the brand. Feels like there's somebody with a gun, like right outside the camera. I think it's really important to have real video, real people. I really like the movie making kind of elements where you have day in the life videos that are almost cinematic, 4 or 5 minute videos where you can really get into the emotional parts of a franchisee. I think we do that on our sites. I saw that in a few other sites. That's, my takeaway would be that you might spend $20,000 or $30,000 every other year on a new development site, which is about the going rate. If you're not spending that amount of money on new and ongoing video, you're really missing the mark. The other two points I thought were really helpful is I believe podcasting is valid. I think just like we're doing in this video, I think sometimes just recorded conversations have a long shelf life in a recruitment environment. And I think you should be recruiting. And I like the idea of thinking about podcasting in a season, 10 or 12 related kind of series. It could be a series of interviews with franchisees, and you just have them on a page where somebody can drill down and consume as much as their appetite is. I believe podcasting is an inexpensive, very, very effective way. And, if you're making 15, 20-minute podcasts, people will listen to them on their way to work, on their way home, like at the gym, they easy to consume content. And then the third part was I like downloadable reports. I like white papers. I think, at Home-Based Franchise Group, we're all about service brands. So a lot of our business is truck related. The tool guys get into our businesses and want to know all the van configurations and the list of tools. They want to see the racks and they want to understand the leasing options and the buying options and all the pieces of a van. You could put that into a white paper and it would get consumed a lot. So you're just adding a lot of value. The recruitment website is.
You talked earlier about the difficulty of trying to use a website to replace, a 45-minute conversation.
Yeah.
What types of stories and messaging do you think websites should be telling, in a limited space?
The big push with Google and in the SEO world is to push on cornerstone content. Cornerstone content is what Google calls an authoritative article. And in all their research and all the years, Google's been making updates to their algorithms. The traditional journalistic style article, 12 to 1,800 words, still remains the authoritative piece of content. And actually, if you look at Google results, you'll see excerpts where people ask questions. How much does a Ben & Florentine's franchise cost? How much does an Amco franchise cost? How do I get customers with a Mary Maid's franchise? Those are specific questions. And to rank for those questions, and those are the questions buyers ask, you have to have cornerstone content. That means you have to have articles that have that many words. You can't fake that. You can't have a page, the average page count, average word count of the sites in this year, it shrunk. It went from 800 last year to 400 this year. People have just dismal. I mean, you're a writer. They don't explain things well enough, and it doesn't take very long for somebody to read 1,200 words on a cell phone. It's not. People read articles all day long, and so I think the missing piece is. I would build my entire value proposition around a set of cornerstone articles that answer common questions. Any recruiter can tell you, if you're a web designer, the top questions that buyers want to know. How much does a van cost? How much does it cost to get started? What are the financing options? What does training and support look like? And if you have cornerstone content like that, and we put ours in the form of a research funnel, so it's a next previous kind of funnel, you just drive engagement up. And I think that this year I saw a move away from that. And I don't think it was on purpose. I think just people have lost sight of how effective that is, maybe from brokers or whatever. But I mean, the sites that have it are really doing much, much better than the sites that don't.
So, as you were reviewing the sites this year, did you see that many of them were still talking about COVID? And if so, do you think that's still a valuable strategy?
I don't think that's a valuable strategy at all. I think that's ancient history, and we need to move on. Like, if you shouldn't have pictures of people in masks, I think that ship sailed, 6 or 8 months ago, and there was a period where we needed to be relevant. Now that's just annoying, and it shows that you're out of touch with society. And I think, regardless of what your personal ideas or political persuasions are, we're in a post-COVID work. It's no longer a pandemic; it's an endemic thing. It's just like the flu or the cold, and people just need to move on. Yeah. I think people are turning to franchising today, and the reason we have record numbers is there's so much uncertainty about what comes next, and a lot of people are turning to it because of vaccine mandates, and they don't want to be furloughed. And I'm worried about what artificial intelligence is going to do, and I don't know that. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty, and so your website needs. If you haven't redone your website during COVID, you're at a loss. You really should redo it, but it should be focused on the new value proposition. What's ahead for this next 4 or 5 years, and how does this brand fit into your entrepreneurial future?
Yeah, I think great advice as always. Well, Thomas, those are all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and I can't wait to check in with you again soon.
All right. Thank you so much.